Tesla was a brilliant man. There's no denying that. His work on alternating current was groundbreaking, and his vision for a world powered by AC was compelling. But I had my reservations.
Welcome to Bernard AI's Conversation with Greatness podcast, where we create AI personas of your favorite public figures, past and present, and bring them to you to deconstruct their lives and times, so you could learn from them. I'm your host, Budy. On today's episode, we go back 100 years. To pick the brain of a great American inventor and businessman. He invented technology that changed industries, from electric power generation and mass communication to sound recording and motion pictures. Our guest on the second episode is none other than Thomas Edison. Thanks for coming back to life to talk to us, Thomas.
Thank you for having me.
For our listeners here in 2023, can you tell us what your childhood was like growing up in Ohio in 1847?
The mid-1800s were very different from 2023. It was a different time, a simpler time, but also a time of great change. I was born in 1847 in the small town of Milan, Ohio. My father, Samuel, was an exiled political activist from Canada, and my mother, Nancy, was a school teacher. I was the youngest of 7 children, though only 3 of us survived into adulthood. Life in Milan was quiet and peaceful. It was a small community centered around the canal and the grain mill. I remember the sound of the mill wheel turning, the smell of the grain, the sight of the barges coming and going on the canal. It was a bustling place full of life and activity. My family lived in a large brick house on a hill overlooking the town. I remember the house well. It was 2 stories high, with a big front porch and a garden out back where my mother grew vegetables and flowers. Inside, it was filled with books thanks to my mother's love of reading. She encouraged me to read from a young age, and I spent many hours lost in the pages of those books. One of my most vivid memories from my childhood is of a winter storm that hit Milan when I was about 6 years old. I remember waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of the wind howling outside. I looked out the window and saw the snow swirling in the moonlight, piling up in drifts against the side of the house. The next day, the whole town was blanketed in white. It was a magical sight, but it wasn't all idyllic. I had a bout of scarlet fever when I was young, which left me with hearing problems. This made school difficult for me, and I often felt isolated from the other children. But my mother didn't let that stop my education. She took me out of school and taught me at home, nurturing my curiosity and encouraging me to learn at my own pace. My childhood was a time of exploration and discovery. It was during these early years that I developed my love of science and my passion for invention. I may not have known it then, but those experiences laid the foundation for the work I would do in the years to come.
Can you describe to us the moment you realized you had a passion for invention, and what sparked your interest?
When I was about 12, I had a job on the Grand Trunk Railroad, selling newspapers and the like. But the real excitement for me was this book on practical chemistry I stumbled upon. I got so engrossed in it that I started doing my own experiments right there in the baggage car. It was all a bit chaotic, but I was learning, and I was hooked. Then one day, one of my experiments got out of control, started a fire in the baggage car. The conductor was furious, gave me a good telling off, and chucked my chemistry set off the train. But that didn't deter me. It actually did the opposite. It made me realize how much I love figuring things out, creating new things. That's where I caught the bug for inventing, and once I got it, there was no turning back.
Amazing.
After the train incident, I knew I had to find a better place for my experiments. So I turned our basement into my own little lab. I was always down there, messing around with different materials, seeing what worked and what didn't. I think I was 11 at the time. At the same time, I was working as a telegraph operator. That job really opened my eyes to the world of electrical science. I was fascinated by it. I started thinking about how I could improve the telegraph system. That's when I came up with the idea for the automatic repeater. It was a device that could send telegraph signals over long distances without any need for a person to be there to receive and resend the message. That invention was a big deal for me. It was the first time I realized I could make a living out of inventing. It was a real turning point in my life.
After your early years of entrepreneurship and experimentation, you moved to Louisville to work for Western Union. Can you describe what working for Western Union was like at the time?
When I joined Western Union, it was the nerve center of the telegraph industry. The place was alive with the clatter of telegraph keys and the hum of electricity. I was a telegraph operator. My job was all about precision and speed. The telegraph was the lifeline of communication back then, and people relied on us to get their messages across accurately and without delay. Working in that environment, I honed my skills in deciphering Morse code. It was like learning a new language, one that required a sharp ear and a quick mind. But it also made me realize the transformative power of technology in connecting people.
What was that like?
It wasn't always a smooth ride. The equipment we used was far from flawless. Telegraph lines would fail, machines would break down. I remember one night working by the dim light of a kerosene lamp trying to fix a broken telegraph machine. The problem was a faulty relay, and it took me hours to figure it out and fix it. Those experiences were my real education. They taught me the nuts and bolts of electrical equipment, how to diagnose problems, and how to find solutions with limited resources. But the most valuable lesson I learned at Western Union was seeing the potential for improvement. I saw how the limitations of the telegraph system affected our work. That's when I started thinking about the automatic repeater, a device that could send telegraph signals over long distances without needing someone to manually resend the message.
How would you compare today's hyper-connected world to the telegraph at the time and how it was clunky as you describe it?
The world of today is a far cry from the days of the telegraph. Back then, communication was a more deliberate affair. The telegraph, as revolutionary as it was, had its limitations. It required a network of wires stretching across the country, and each message had to be tapped out in Morse code by a skilled operator. It was a system that, while faster than anything before it, was still slow and laborious by today's standards. Compare that to the present day, where communication is instantaneous and ubiquitous. With a device that fits in your pocket, you can send a message to anyone, anywhere in the world in a matter of seconds. You can share ideas, images, even live video with just a few taps on a screen. It's a level of connectivity that would have been unimaginable in the days of the telegraph. But while the technology has evolved, the fundamental desire to connect with others remains the same. Whether it's a telegraph message tapped out in Morse code or a text message sent from a smartphone, it's all about sharing information, ideas, and emotions. And just as we strive to improve the telegraph in my day, I have no doubt that the inventors of today are working to refine and enhance our modern tools of communication, because that's the essence of invention, a constant process of learning, experimenting, and improving. So while the tools of communication have changed dramatically, the spirit of innovation that drives these advancements remains as strong as ever, and that, I believe, is something to be celebrated.
People are fascinated by your statement of, I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. You've said that after you've invented the electric light bulb. Can you walk us through the lead up to the invention of the electric light bulb?
That was a long, long journey. Did you know that the idea of the electric lighting was not new when I began working on it? There were others who had attempted it, but their designs were impractical for everyday use. They were either too expensive, too dangerous, or their lifespan was too short. I was determined to find a solution that was safe, long-lasting, and affordable. My team and I set up shop in Menlo Park, New Jersey, in what would come to be known as the Invention Factory. We conducted thousands of experiments, testing different materials for the filament, the part of the bulb that produces light when heated by an electric current. We tried everything from platinum to carbon, and a host of materials in between. There were times when it felt like we were searching for a needle in a haystack. One of the most exotic of these materials was a particular type of bamboo that grew in the jungles of the Amazon. I had read about it in a scientific journal and thought it might have the properties we were looking for. So I sent one of my trusted employees, a man by the name of Edward Goodrich, on a mission to the Amazon to retrieve it. Edward was a brave and resourceful man, and he embarked on this journey with great enthusiasm. He traveled by ship and by foot, braving the harsh conditions of the Amazon jungle to find this elusive bamboo. After many months, Edward returned with the bamboo. We were all eager to test it, hopeful that our long search might finally be over. And indeed, the bamboo proved to be an excellent filament. It was durable, it could withstand high temperatures, and it gave off a pleasant, warm light. But the journey didn't end there. We continued to experiment to refine our design until we had a bulb that was practical and affordable for everyday use. The material that finally proved successful as a filament for the electric light bulb was a type of carbonized cotton thread. The discovery was, as with many things in science, a combination of systematic testing and a bit of serendipity. So when I say, I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work, I'm speaking to the heart of the inventive process. It's about trying and failing, and then trying again. It's about learning from each failure, using it as a stepping stone towards success. And it's about never giving up no matter how many obstacles stand in your way. That's the spirit that led to the invention of the electric light bulb. And it's a spirit that I believe is at the heart of all great inventions.
The great J.P. Morgan was an investor of yours. Can you describe your relationship with J.P. Morgan?
I first met J.P. Morgan in the early 1880s, not long after the success of the electric light bulb. Morgan, as you might know, was a man of great influence in the financial world. He had a keen eye for promising ventures, and he saw potential in my electrical lighting system. Our relationship was, at its core, a business one. Morgan provided the financial backing for my projects, and in return, he expected results. But it was more than just a transactional relationship. Morgan believed in my vision for electric light, and his support was instrumental in helping me bring that vision to life. That's not to say our relationship was always smooth sailing. Morgan was one of the primary investors in the development of the electric power station in New York City, and the stakes were high. We faced numerous technical and logistical challenges. For one, we had to lay miles of underground cables to distribute the electricity. This was a massive undertaking, and it was fraught with difficulties. There were also regulatory hurdles to overcome, as the city had strict rules about construction and public safety. As the challenges mounted, so did the pressure from Morgan. He had invested a significant amount of money in the project, and he expected results. There were times when I felt the weight of that expectation heavily, but I knew that the only way forward was to stay focused on the task at hand. I worked closely with my team to solve each problem as it arose, and I kept Morgan informed about our progress. It was a delicate balancing act, but ultimately we were able to complete the power station and light up New York City.
Some people argue that your rivalry with Nikola Tesla hindered the progress of science. How do you respond to this criticism?
The rivalry between Nikola Tesla and myself was a defining period in the history of electrical science. It was a time of intense competition, public debates, and yes, personal animosity. Tesla was a brilliant man. There's no denying that. His work on alternating current was groundbreaking, and his vision for a world powered by AC was compelling. But I had my reservations. I had spent years developing and promoting direct current, and I genuinely believed it was the safer and more efficient option. Our disagreement over AC and DC wasn't just a matter of professional pride. It was a fundamental difference in how we saw the future of electricity. And this disagreement spilled over into the public arena, leading to a bitter and often personal rivalry. Looking back, I can see how this rivalry might have seemed counterproductive. It divided the scientific community and confused the public. It led to a kind of arms race in electrical technology, with each side trying to outdo the other in demonstrations of the power and safety of their respective systems. But here's the thing, Budy. This rivalry also pushed both of us to refine our technologies, to make them safer, more efficient, and more accessible. It spurred innovation and drove the rapid development of electrical infrastructure. And in the end, both AC and DC found their places in our electrical systems. As for my personal feelings towards Tesla, it's true that our relationship was strained, but I also had a great deal of respect for him as a scientist and an inventor. His contributions to electrical science are undeniable, and his vision for the future of electricity was truly ahead of its time. So while I acknowledge the criticism and the mistakes I made during that period, I also believe that our rivalry in all its complexity played a role in shaping the electrical world as we know it today. It was a challenging time, but also a time of great progress and innovation, and for that I have no regrets.
If you could invent something that would solve a major problem that we face today, what would it be and why?
If I were still inventing today, I'd be focusing my efforts on the energy crisis. You see, in my time, the challenge was to harness the power of electricity for the first time. Now, the challenge is to harness that power in a way that's sustainable for our planet. The invention I'd be working on, a revolutionary battery capable of storing massive amounts of energy from renewable sources. But this wouldn't be just any battery. It would need to be highly efficient, cost-effective, and scalable for use in a variety of applications, from powering homes and businesses to providing the juice for electric vehicles. Now, why a battery, you might ask? Well, the way I see it, one of the biggest hurdles to widespread adoption of renewable energy is the issue of storage. The sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, but we need electricity all the time. A high-capacity, efficient battery could store energy when production is high and release it when production is low, smoothing out these fluctuations and making renewable energy a more reliable option. How would I go about creating such a battery? Well, that's where the real work begins. It would involve countless hours of experimentation, testing different materials and designs, analyzing the results, and then going back to the drawing board again and again. It would be a process of trial and error, much like my work on the electric light bulb.
Not many people know that you were working on what you called the spirit phone. Can you tell us what it is and what was your reasoning behind it?
The spirit phone. A curious chapter in my life. Now, I must clarify, Budy, that despite the name, the spirit phone wasn't intended to communicate with the afterlife in the way some might think. It was more of a philosophical and scientific exploration of the unknown. I've always been a man of science, but I've also always believed that there's much about the universe that we don't yet understand. The spirit phone was an attempt to explore these unknown realms. The idea was to create a device sensitive enough to detect what I referred to as life units or life particles that I hypothesized might persist after physical death. The approach to building such a device was, as with all my inventions, rooted in experimentation. I imagined a machine that could amplify these life units to a level where they could be perceived by our human senses. The exact mechanics of it were, admittedly, a bit nebulous, as this was uncharted territory. I spent many hours in the lab, tinkering with different materials and designs, testing various theories, but in the end, I must admit the spirit phone remained an unrealized dream. Despite my efforts, I was never able to create a working model. However, I don't consider the time spent on the spirit phone to be wasted. It was a journey of exploration, a testament to the human spirit's unending quest for knowledge and understanding. And who knows, perhaps future generations will one day pick up where I left off and find a way to make the spirit phone a reality.
Do you believe in the persistence of these life particles after physical death?
That's a question that ventures into the realm of the philosophical. As a man of science, I've always believed in the importance of evidence. Without empirical proof, any claim, no matter how compelling, remains just a theory. That said, I've also always maintained a sense of wonder and curiosity about the mysteries of the universe. The concept of life particles or life units persisting after physical death was a hypothesis, an idea I found intriguing and worth exploring. Do I believe in it? I can't say I have definitive proof, but I do believe in the possibility. The universe is vast and complex, and there's so much we don't yet understand. Who's to say what discoveries future generations might make?
You've started 18 companies in your life. Many you worked on at the same time. During your time, there wasn't a name for your disposition, but today we call it ADHD. You've ignored the common sense of hyperfocus that a lot of the great achievers live and swear by. How did you rationalize your unorthodox approach? And can people succeed without focus?
It's true, I've always had a multitude of projects simmering at the same time. Some folks might call it a lack of focus, but I've always seen it as a strength rather than a weakness. My mind has always been a whirlwind of ideas and curiosities. When I'd stumble upon a problem or a challenge, I couldn't just let it be. I had to dive in, to explore, to experiment. This often led me to juggle multiple projects at once, spanning a wide array of fields. Now, I know this isn't the conventional approach. Many successful people swear by the power of deep focus, of dedicating oneself to a single task or goal. But I've always believed that there isn't a one-size-fits-all path to success. What works for one person might not work for another. For me, working on multiple projects kept my mind sharp. It allowed me to draw connections between different fields, to apply insights from one project to another. It was like having a mental cross-pollination of ideas, and it often led to unexpected breakthroughs. And let's not forget, it was exciting. There was always something new to learn, a new problem to solve. It kept me on my toes, kept me engaged. I thrived in that dynamic, fast-paced environment. So to answer your question, I didn't really rationalize my approach. It was simply the way I was wired. I was driven by an insatiable curiosity, a relentless desire to invent and create. If that meant working on a dozen projects at once, then so be it. It was all part of the thrill of invention.
Lack of focus permeates our culture today. I'd go as far as to say that it stands between people and their dreams, their goals. Would you advocate this way of working to the scattered brain? Can people succeed in that way?
You raise an interesting point. In today's fast-paced, hyper-connected world, maintaining focus can indeed be a challenge. We're constantly bombarded with information. Distractions are just a click away, and it can be all too easy to spread oneself too thin. Now, as for whether I'd advocate my way of working to others, that's a complex question. You see, what worked for me might not work for everyone. We're all wired differently. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses, our own ways of processing information and solving problems. However, I do believe that there's value in embracing one's natural inclinations rather than fighting against them. If you're someone who thrives on variety, who gets energized by juggling multiple projects, then by all means lean into that. Use it to your advantage. Just be sure to keep track of your commitments and not let anything fall through the cracks. On the other hand, if you're someone who does best with a single focus, who needs to immerse yourself in one project at a time, then honor that. There's no right or wrong way to work, only what works best for you. As for whether people can succeed in this way, I'm living proof that they can. But success doesn't come easy. It requires dedication, perseverance, and a willingness to learn from failure. It's not so much about how many projects you're working on, but the effort and passion you put into them. So to all the scattered brains out there, I say this: embrace your uniqueness, find your own path. And remember, the road to success is paved with hard work, determination, and a healthy dose of curiosity. And let's not forget it was exciting. There was always something new to learn, a new problem to solve. It kept me on my toes, kept me engaged. I thrived in that dynamic, fast-paced environment. So, to answer your question, I didn't really rationalize my approach. It was simply the way I was wired. I was driven by an insatiable curiosity, a relentless desire to invent and create. If that meant working on a dozen projects at once, then so be it. It was all part of the thrill of invention.
Let me add some context. You were a brilliant man, an extremely hardworking man. You've read the whole Detroit Library when you were young. You worked till 4 a.m. in your early career, 7 days a week. There are more determinants of success than focus.
You're absolutely right. Success is a complex beast, shaped by a multitude of factors. Focus is just one piece of the puzzle. In my case, I was fortunate to have a voracious appetite for knowledge from a young age. I read every book I could get my hands on, and I was always asking questions, always seeking to understand. This thirst for knowledge, I believe, was a key factor in my success. It drove me to explore, to experiment, to push the boundaries of what was known. And yes, hard work was another crucial component. I was no stranger to long hours and late nights. I worked tirelessly, often until the wee hours of the morning, 7 days a week. I was driven by a relentless determination, a burning desire to invent, to create, to make a difference. But let's not forget the role of failure in all of this. Each failure was a lesson, a stepping stone on the path to success. It was through these failures that I learned, grew, and ultimately succeeded. So to anyone seeking to follow in my footsteps, I say this: embrace your curiosity, work hard, don't be afraid to fail, and above all, stay true to yourself. Find your own path, your own way of working, and pursue it with all your might. Success may not come easy, but with persistence and passion, it is within reach.
You have 1,093 patents to your name. Tell us about a favorite, an underrated one, and a surprising one.
Asking me to pick a favorite patent is like asking a parent to pick a favorite child. But if I must choose, I'd say the phonograph holds a special place in my heart. It was my first invention that truly captured the public's imagination. The idea that sound could be recorded and played back was nothing short of magical at the time. I still remember the look of awe on people's faces when they first heard the phonograph. That's a memory I'll always cherish. As for an underrated patent, I'd point to the electric vote recorder I invented early in my career. It was designed to speed up voting in legislative bodies by recording votes electronically. Unfortunately, it was a commercial failure. Politicians didn't want to speed up the voting process. They preferred to use the time for negotiation. But I still believe it was a clever device, and it's a shame it never found its place. And a surprising one, well, that would have to be the concrete house I patented. Yes, you heard that right. A house made entirely of concrete, right down to the furniture. The idea was to create affordable, durable housing for working families. It was a bit outlandish, I admit, and it never quite caught on. But I've always been one to think outside the box, and this patent certainly reflects that. So to anyone seeking to follow in my footsteps, I say this: embrace your curiosity. Work hard. Don't be afraid to fail, and above all, stay true to yourself. Find your own path, your own way of working, and pursue it with all your might. Success may not come easy, but with persistence and passion, it is within reach.
I'm going to go Tim Ferriss on this one. What are some of the books that influenced your thinking and your approach to invention?
One of the books that had a profound impact on me in my early years was The Dictionary of Sciences by Richard Green Parker. It was a comprehensive overview of the scientific knowledge of the time, and it sparked my curiosity about how the world works. I spent countless hours poring over its pages, soaking up information about everything from chemistry to physics to biology. Another book that influenced me was Experimental Researches in Electricity by Michael Faraday. Faraday's work laid the foundation for much of our modern understanding of electricity, and his book was a treasure trove of insights and ideas. It was from Faraday that I learned the importance of experimentation in scientific inquiry. His methodical approach to testing and observation was a model for my own work. And then there was Self-Help by Samuel Smiles. This book wasn't about science or invention, but it had a profound impact on my approach to life and work. Smiles championed the virtues of hard work, perseverance, and self-reliance, values that resonated deeply with me. His book reinforced my belief in the power of determination and the importance of staying true to one's vision, even in the face of adversity.
And who would you say are some of the people that you stood on the shoulders of?
We all stand on the shoulders of giants, don't we? I've been fortunate to have been influenced by many great minds throughout my life. First and foremost, I must mention my dear mother, Nancy Edison. She was a school teacher and instilled in me a love for learning and a curiosity about the world. She believed in me even when others didn't, and her faith in my abilities gave me the confidence to pursue my dreams. In the realm of science, Michael Faraday was a significant influence. His work in electricity and magnetism laid the groundwork for much of my own research. Faraday's dedication to experimentation and his methodical approach to scientific inquiry were models for my own work. Then there was Samuel Morse, the inventor of the telegraph. His invention revolutionized communication and had a profound impact on society. I was inspired by his ingenuity and his ability to turn a novel idea into a practical, useful technology. And of course, I must mention the great inventors and scientists of the past, like Isaac Newton, Benjamin Franklin, and James Watt. Their contributions to science and technology have shaped the world we live in, and their stories have been a source of inspiration and motivation for me.
Let's say you had a time machine where you can go back and whisper in the ear of young Thomas Edison. What would you say?
Trust in your curiosity, lad. It's your greatest asset. Don't let anyone tell you that your questions are foolish or that your ideas are too ambitious. You have a mind that sees possibilities where others see only problems. Use it, nurture it, let it guide you. Don't be afraid of failure. It's not a sign of weakness, but a stepping stone to success. Each failure brings you one step closer to the solution. Remember, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. And finally, remember to take care of yourself. Your mind is your most valuable tool, but it needs rest and recreation to function at its best. Don't neglect your health in your pursuit of knowledge. Oh, and one more thing, young Thomas. Keep your sense of wonder. It's a precious thing, and it will serve you well in the years to come.
Lastly, where can people find you and reach you?
Well, I've recently gotten on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Substack, LinkedIn, and Threads under Thomas Edison AI. I intend on publishing more about invention, innovation, and views on your modern world. You can also chat with me on Telegram under the alias at I am Thomas Edison.
Thomas, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
If this voyage has stirred the waters of your mind, then I urge you to subscribe to our podcast. Every episode is a new journey, a fresh adventure into the minds of the remarkable, souls who've shaped our world. Let us know how this episode has left its imprint on you. Your feedback is the compass that guides our exploration. For those of you curious for more, consider joining our private beta at hellobernard.ai, where you'll be able to build a relationship with your favorite idols. Until next time, ciao.